You know, back in 1963, Bob Dylan wrote this incredible song about the murder of civil rights activist Medgar Evers. But only a pawn in their game isn't just a history lesson about a 60-year-old tragedy. Oh no, it's actually a blueprint, a piercing analysis of how racism is engineered politically for a purpose. So today, we're going to break down that blueprint and see just how relevant it is right now.
The song kicks off by just throwing this huge wrench into the works. It makes us look beyond the obvious answers and ask a much tougher question about racial violence. Who's really responsible?
And then you get this line. This is the one that just stops you in your tracks. Dylan describes the assassination with this bone-chilling detail, and then he drops this bombshell. But he can't be blamed. I mean, what? It's a seriously challenging idea. How can the guy who literally fired the gun not be blamed? Well, that's exactly what we're about to unpack.
What Dylan is forcing us to do here is to stop staring at the finger on the trigger. He's telling us to zoom out, to look at the whole machine that built the gunman in the first place, aimed him, and told him it was his patriotic duty to fire.
Now, let's be absolutely clear. Dylan is not letting the killer off the hook. This is an autopsy, not an absolution. It's a cold, hard look at the social and political system that created a person like that, arguing that the killer is just a symptom of a much deeper disease.
Okay, so let's start peeling back the layers of this system. First up, Dylan points his finger directly at the politicians who cash in on all this hatred. They're the ones who rigged the game from the very beginning. And listen to how specific he gets here. He lays out the exact script they use. It's a simple but totally toxic formula. Make the poor white man feel superior based on nothing more than his skin color, and then, crucially, tell him to shut up about his own problems.
And this, right here, this is the playbook. It's a four-step process. First, you give them a false sense of status. Second, you shut down any chance of them uniting with others over their shared economic struggles. Third, you give them a scapegoat to blame for all their problems. And finally, you just ride that wave of manufactured anger all the way to the top.
This is the dark magic of the whole thing. You take people's very real fears about jobs, about money, about losing their place in the world, and you perform this kind of twisted alchemy, turning all that economic anxiety into pure racial hatred. And that becomes the fuel for your political engine.
And what's just staggering is how this 60-year-old blueprint perfectly describes the political strategy of someone like Donald Trump. Right? He simplifies complex issues, he points to scapegoats like immigrants, and he promises to restore a sense of status to his base. It is the exact same mechanism Dylan called out all those years ago, turning social resentment into a powerful, racialized political weapon.
But of course, the politician isn't doing this all alone. The next level of this pyramid involves the entire state apparatus. We're talking about the institutions that make this racial hierarchy official and make sure everyone knows the rules of the game.
And Dylan just lists them out, one after another. This isn't some fringe group operating in the shadows. This is the official power structure. Cops, soldiers, governors, marshals, even the schools. They're all part of it, all paid to uphold this twisted order.
And this part is absolutely key. The indoctrination starts young. The system isn't just enforced with violence, it's taught in the classroom. The goal is laid out right there: keep up his hate. And why? So he never, ever thinks straight.
So that brings us to the pawn himself. What's the psychological toll of being a foot soldier in this kind of game? What does it actually do to a person's mind?
Well, here it is. This is the tragic result of all that brainwashing. The hatred he's been taught to feel acts like a pair of blinders. It's so powerful, so all-consuming, that it stops him from ever looking at his own life, his own poverty, his own powerlessness, and asking that simple question: wait a minute, why am I in this shape?
In other words, racism isn't just a weapon he aims at other people. It's also the bars of his own cage. It keeps him from ever realizing that he's stuck on the caboose of the economic train, while the very politicians riling him up are riding comfortably up front in first class.
Man, this line is just devastating. The very system he's fighting to protect ultimately dehumanizes him too. It strips him of his own individuality, his own agency, his very name. He's been turned into nothing more than a tool, an anonymous weapon for someone else's power.
So after the bullet has been fired, after the tragedy is played out, how does the game finally end? What's the final score for the hero and for the pawn?
And here you see the final tragic irony of it all.
Medgar Evers, the victim, dies a martyr and is buried like a king. But the killer, the guy who thought he was a hero fighting for a cause, he's left with nothing. His only legacy, his epitaph, is that he was just a disposable piece in their game.
And that, right there, is the ultimate takeaway. The entire structure, the whole rotten game, is designed for one single purpose: to protect the people at the top of the pyramid. And the way it works is by making damn sure the people at the bottom are too busy fighting each other to ever look up and see who's really pulling the strings.
In the end, it all comes back to this one simple, damning line. It's an indictment not just of one man, but of an entire system that uses, abuses, and then discards human beings for political power.
Dylan gave us this blueprint all the way back in 1963. So the real question for us today is this: who is still playing that same game? Who still profits from turning us against each other? The playbook is old, but as we've just seen, it is far, far from retired.